I'm Allison from Learning at the Primary Pond. I'm a reading specialist and I help parents of kids who are struggling to learn to read. In this video, I'm going to explain exactly what you want to do if your 10-year-old can't read yet. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, go ahead and do that now, and then also hit the little bell so that you don't miss out when I post videos about helping your child learn to read. Okay, so before we get into all of this about what you should do, I first want to take a step back and just acknowledge that if your 10-year-old can't read yet, that is a difficult situation. Your kid probably, is frustrated at school. Maybe then when they're working with you on reading or schoolwork at home, that can create conflict. You as the parent might be wondering, what have I done wrong? You might be blaming yourself, feeling like you're failing your child. Reading is so fundamental to their success in school and in life. And so it can cause big problems when a child can't read the way they're supposed to be reading. So I just wanted to take a second and acknowledge that. I also want to reassure you that you're not alone. 20, 25%, sometimes even more of percentage of students struggle to learn to read. So there's a lot of kids out there that are struggling, but I'm so glad that you found this video because this will help get you and your kiddo on the right track. I want to start with giving you a picture of what it involves to be able to read, because reading is often talked about as like this one skill, like, your child's getting an A in reading, or they're not getting an A in reading in this case, right? And in reality, there are so many components of reading that if you're not aware of this, then you're just going to be like having them read more or reading with them, and you're not going to know how to target the specific areas that they need to work on, which will then help them with their reading overall. So that's why it's so important to be aware of these different areas. And I'm going to give you just a quick tutorial in these areas to raise your awareness. All right, so the first one you may have heard of, and that is phonics. So phonics is understanding the relationships between letters and sounds. This could be at a very basic level, like if your child is learning the letter sounds and they're learning that the letter M, whoops, you can't even see that. They're learning that the letter M can say or if they're learning pairs of letters like OA, in the word boat, OA can represent the O sound. So phonics is learning the relationships between the sounds and the letters. You probably have heard of phonics before. Now, phonics knowledge is vital so that kids can take words and decode them. So next up here, what I have is decoding skills. Now, when kids are, working on simple words like the word sun, what they have to do is they have to take their phonics knowledge, move that over, they have to take their phonics knowledge and know that S can represent the S sound, the can represent the sound, and the N can represent the N sound. So they have to take that information, then they also have to put those sounds together to blend, right? So that's where the decoding skill comes in. They have to take sun and blend it to say sun, right? So decoding skills are necessary to take the phonics and read words with it. Now, as we get into longer multisyllabic words, like the word trampoline, for example, that has 3 syllables, trampoline, kids have to do a little more. Yeah, they have to know phonics, they have to know how to blend sounds, but they also have to know how to break down a longer word into its syllables, read each part, and then put the parts together. So that's another skill area. And if your child is struggling and they're like maybe a year or 2 behind in school and they're about 10 years old, multisyllabic words are probably going to be an area of difficulty for them, assuming that word reading is what they struggle with. So multisyllabic words, something you may need to work with them on. Next up, we have irregular words. So irregular words are words that we can say break the rules of phonics. So for example, if I write the word what right here. Now the rules of phonics would tell me that the W and H work together to say oo, the A would say ah, and the T would say t. But the problem is if I sound it out like that, oo, at, that gives me wat, and it's not the word, it's what. There are some irregularly spelled words like what that kids have to learn, and they have to remember like, oh, okay, the A is representing an unusual or a different sound. So part of being able to read successfully is, yeah, you got to be able to decode these words, but you also have to know the irregular words so that the kids can read them quickly and easily. So all of that is involved in word reading, right? Now, the better kids get at word reading, generally, the better their reading fluency is. Being able to read fluently means being able to read at a good pace, accurately, and with good expression. So not reading like a robot, right? With expression, and they're paying attention to the periods, and when they're reading a question, it sounds like they're asking a question. All of that is fluency. Often when kids are struggling, teachers will say, well, their fluency is low. They're not reading quickly enough. Fluency is kind of like the tip of the iceberg. That's what you can see. But underneath the water, we have phonics knowledge, decoding skill. Do they know irregular words? Can they break down multisyllabic words? All of these things that we've just talked about are going to feed into fluency, okay? Because if kids aren't reading words accurately and they aren't reading words quickly, then they're not going to be fluent. Now, the first time a child is reading a word, they're always going to be decoding or sounding it out. Even if they're not doing it out loud, that's what their brain is doing. Their brain is sounding out the word. And so, for a child to become fluent, they can't be decoding every single word. That's an important first step. But fluent reading means, you're looking at the word what and you're just saying what. You're not like sounding it out, right? So kids need lots of exposures, and kids that are struggling with reading need even more exposures than their peers. They need lots of repetitions of words so that they get to the point where they can read it very quickly and easily. They can read a word by sight, okay? So all of that feeds into reading fluency. Now, reading fluency also feeds into reading comprehension because, well, you know what? Let me compare this. Think about if you drive. Think about when you were first learning how to drive. If you can recall that, then what I remember is like feeling like there's so much going on. You have to think about like the turn signal and the brakes and like stay in the lane. For me, it was a lot to think about. Now when I drive, I just get in the car and go and I don't think about it, right? I have to be safe, but I don't consciously think about all these different pieces of driving. It is automatic. Automatic is what we want our kids to get to with their reading, because if they can read fluently and automatically, then guess what? Their brain's not worried about figuring out the words. Their brain can start thinking about what the text is saying so that they understand, so that they comprehend what they're reading. So fluency is important because then it feeds into reading comprehension. And if you're hearing or if you're thinking that your child is struggling with reading comprehension, it may very well be that they have a language issue that has nothing to do with them reading the words. Maybe they can read the words beautifully. It's just that they can't understand what they read right now. That's a language comprehension issue that's a little bit different. But if your child's teacher, or if you're thinking that your child struggles with reading comprehension, you always want to make sure that it's not actually word recognition, all this other stuff, that's preventing them from comprehending. Because if they can't actually sound out and, decode multisyllabic words or words in general, then, they're not going to understand what the text means because they don't know what the words say. So sometimes a reading comprehension problem is that they have trouble with language comprehension. Whether you read aloud a book to them or they're reading it, a language comprehension issue makes it hard for them to understand. But if your child understands when you read aloud to them, but they don't understand when they read on their own, more than likely there's an issue with the word recognition skills, and it looks like a comprehension issue, but it might not be. Okay, so I hope that this gives you a little bit of background on all the different skill sets that are involved in learning to read. So now let's talk about what to do given that your child is struggling. Okay, so one really important thing that I want to emphasize is that you take action right away. It doesn't matter if your child is 10 or 14 or 7. If you notice that they're struggling with reading, the time to take action is now. Because what happens is if a child does not get the help that they need, they continue to struggle. The gap between where they are and where their peers are gets bigger. The peers are up here. Your child is not getting the help that they need, so they stay down here. their self-confidence suffers. They begin to believe, I'm never going to be able to read, or this is always going to be hard for me, or I can't do this. They start to feel bad about themselves, which is not good at all to their whole development as a person. So the longer you wait, the worse the problem can get. Now, it is never too late to fix a problem. All of that being said, there are adult readers who go their entire lives, they don't know how to read, and they can learn to read when they have the proper instruction. So absolutely advocate for themselves, advocate for your child at school. If you want to hire a tutor, hire a tutor. But what I actually recommend is that you also learn how to help your child yourself. Because here's the thing, tutors come and go. Sometimes tutoring can be expensive and you may only be able to do it once a week. Well, kids that are behind need more than just, once a week practice. They need help practice most days of the week. So that's why it's so important for parents to educate themselves, just like you're doing, which is why I'm so glad you're here, so that they are equipped to help their child be successful with reading, because you're going to always be there for them, right? So you'll be able to help them once you have the right knowledge. Okay, so that being said, we're going to take action now. And one really easy way to take action is to download my free guide. I talked here about how phonics and decoding skills are really essential. And this free guide will help you understand if your child has phonics gaps and just how they're doing with decoding. And I also included spelling in here as well, so that you can find out, hey, before we worry about all this other stuff, do they have the basics down? This free guide will tell you, it will give you the answer to that. And it's really easy to give, just a very quick test that you can give at home. So in the caption for this video, I will include a link for this. You can grab it. Again, it's totally free. That will help you pinpoint what phonics skills they might need to work on. From there, you will want to have them practice reading and spelling words with the phonics skills that are mentioned here. So depending upon how your child scores, this will tell you exactly which phonics skills to work on with them and gives you a little guidance in that area, okay? So reading and spelling words with those phonics patterns, of course, reading entire texts. Decodable readers are something to definitely look up. I have some, so feel free to reach out if you want some of mine, but decodable readers are books that are focused on the specific phonics patterns that your child needs to learn. So that's a great tool in giving them decoding practice. If they're struggling with irregular words, you can look up sight word list or high frequency word list to find a list of some words. Not all of them are irregularly spelled. So you could also search for something called heart words. Those are irregular words to look up for your child to practice. And so with all of this, we also want to build fluency, and working on all of the phonics and decoding will help build fluency. But another thing you can do is have them reread texts more than once. So when they finish a book, great, come back the next day or a couple of days later, have them read it again. That repetition builds fluency, and kids that are struggling with reading often need a lot more repetition than their peers. So a great opportunity for you to provide that repetition, because having worked in so many schools, I know that they're probably not getting enough at school. Not to the fault of teachers, but just due to the limited time that they have in the school day. You can really give kids that repetition, your child that repetition at home, by working on fluency and rereading. Now let's talk about reading comprehension. I always recommend, no matter how old your child is, that you continue to read to them and talk about stories and nonfiction books, whatever interests them, read aloud to them and talk about books. Of course, talk about the books that your child is reading as well. And if you're noticing that your child really isn't understanding books, even when you're reading them aloud, or even when you're listening to an audiobook together, talk to your child's school. Even sometimes a pediatrician can help, and you want to ask for a language evaluation. Often here in the US, it's done by a speech and language therapist, and what they can do is they can figure out, does your child have a certain difficulty with comprehending language? And if they do have difficulty, then a speech and language therapist is usually the one who can provide services to help. So that is something to look into with reading comprehension as well. But as I said, there's so much that you can do as a parent. Don't wait and feel like, oh, well, I need the school to take care of it, or I'm just going to wait till they do something. No. No one is a better advocate for your child than you. Your child has you, and that's who they can depend on. I feel very strongly about this, hence my moving hand. So again, a really good place to start is with my free parent guide. You can download it. You can find out if your child has any phonics skill gaps, because that's really the foundation of what you're doing here. So link for this is in the caption. Okay, now if after you complete this free guide and the little assessment, you do find that your child needs work with phonics and decoding and all of that, I do also have a complete program. It's called Rising Readers, and I will include the link for that in the caption of this video. So again, look for the link for the free guide and then also my complete program that gives you everything you need and all the information that you can use to learn how to help your child. So the link for Rising Readers, that program, is also in the caption. Again, I am so glad that you're watching this video, because if your child is struggling, now is the time to take action. If you have any questions, feel free to leave that in the comments. Always happy to help. Thank you so much for watching. It would mean so much to me before you leave if you would hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.